Okay, David, it appears that everybody is logged on. Attendees should be good to view the webinar now, so we can start whenever you are ready. You are muted though.
Well, I just said, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? So,
Now we can. All
okay,
good.
very good. Thank you. You all were just in stunned silence, but it was because I was on mute. So clearly, I haven't figured this out after 5 years. Um, I'll go ahead and call to order the January meeting of the Alexandria Transit Company Board of Directors. Thank you all for joining us. At Josh's suggestion, we decided to have a virtual meeting tonight just to accommodate folks, especially if as schools were still closed in the city today, and understanding that everybody's got kind of different situations they're navigating with this kind of unexpected snow. So thanks all for being here, and we'll kind of figure this out. It kind of feels like the old days of COVID because we haven't done this in a while. I'll ask if our board secretary will call the roll.
Chair Kaplan,
Here.
Vice Chair Kleist,
Here.
Arish Gudger,
Here.
Matt Harris,
Here.
Praveen Kathpal,
Like he's
Jesse-
muted right now, but
Sorry, that was delayed here by Praveen.
okay, thanks. Jesse O'Connell,
Here.
Hillary Orr,
Here.
Kirsten Phelps,
Here.
Kendall Taylor,
Here.
Ajay Thomas, Arthur Wicks.
Here.
Chair Kaplan, you have a quorum. The only one absent is Ajay Thomas.
All right, thank you, Madam Secretary. Josh, is the boardable rep here now? It looks like that's next on the agenda.
yes, Brian Hartz is on with us. Brian, you are a panelist, so you can be seen and heard. If you have a presentation you would like to share, I will stop my share and allow you to do that.
Yes, great. Yeah, we will be sharing a couple of things, including a couple of slides and a live view of Boardable online. So if you could enable me, then that would be terrific.
All right, yeah, give it a try and let's see if it will let you.
It appears to have done so.
Great.
All right. Well, hi, everybody. Yes, my name is Brian Hartz. I'm with Boardable. I am a senior customer success manager here, based in Indianapolis, Indiana, where we are also buried under a whole bunch of snow. So I'm glad to see everybody's home and safe for this meeting. Boardable is an online platform that's designed to basically make your jobs easier as board members, to centralize information and communication, everything from planning and running meetings to document centralization to discussion and communication tools. And so I'm going to give you a brief introduction to this platform that Dash has recently adopted to hopefully help you become more efficient and effective. I'll run through a very brief high-level overview of Boardable online, and then we'll have a little bit of time for questions as well. So if you don't mind, I will launch right in. I only have a couple of slides, and then we'll go out to where we can see the tool live. So as I mentioned, Boardable is an entirely cloud-based application. You can access it via the web on a computer, but we also provide a desktop and mobile apps that you can download from your favorite app store. This slide deck contains links you can use to do that. I will share that after this session, but you can also just search for Boardable in your favorite app store, and you should be able to find us. That will enable you to take advantage of everything Boardable provides you with on the go. Be able to keep in touch with push notifications and other handy things to meet you where you are. If you have not logged into Boardable already, you should have or will soon receive an email invitation to join Boardable. And all you have to do is click the big friendly blue button that says accept this invitation in order to get started. It'll just take you to Boardable where your name and email address are waiting, and then you can set your password and you're off to the races. Once you are in, we do recommend that you bookmark the login page for Boardable. You can also log in directly from our customer-facing website as well. When you log in, you can use the email and password that you had set up, We also enable single sign-on via Google, LinkedIn, and Microsoft. So if you're logged in through one of those, you can just click right into Boardable from there. And of course, if you forget your password, we have a couple of options for you to be able to get in there and do your business, and also change that password. Once you get into Boardable, you'll find yourself on the home page, which acts as your dashboard for everything you need to do. And hooray, that's the end of the slides. I don't know about you, but I don't love long slide presentations. So I'm going to bounce over to where we can take a look at Boardable online briefly. And I'll go ahead and reshare here. Okay, what you should be seeing right now is the Boardable homepage. Again, this is sort of your dashboard where you can see everything you're going to need to have access to in Boardable, including a general message for the organization. I can access any groups that I am part of. I'm members of the executive and finance committees here, so you can see that I can jump right to those groups. I can see upcoming meetings and as well as any discussions, tasks, or polls that I am participating in currently. Basically, if it's relevant to you, it will show up here on the home page. Before we dive into some of the additional features, I want to share with you as well how you can adjust your own user settings once you're in Boardable. Up in the upper right, you see my photo is here. If you haven't uploaded a photo yet, it'll just be your initials. But I can get to my user settings from here. Which are where you can enter all the basic information, such as contact info, etc. That you'll need to flesh out your profile, make sure you're accessible in the people section to your fellow board members. You can adjust your own personal settings, including your default time zone. You can choose which language you'd like to use to access Boardable. We do have several to choose from. You can also decide how often you'd like to receive email notifications when important stuff happens in Boardable, like a meeting date has changed, or there's a discussion that's awaiting your response, or something like that. You can choose to be notified immediately via email. You can choose to get a twice-a-day digest of updates via email. You can choose not to send notifications at all via email. Don't recommend that unless maybe you're on vacation or something. You can also enter additional email addresses to which notifications can be sent. So if you have, say, a home and a work address that you want to make sure are on copy, maybe you have an assistant that you want to make sure gets a copy of your notifications, you can add an additional address there. You can also choose the cadence at which you would like to be reminded of upcoming meetings or tasks, anywhere from 1 to 5 days in advance. This is also, of course, where you can adjust your login and password information. Finally, before we leave here, I also want to point out something else that's in this top right menu, which is our accessibility tools. If you happen to need any special accommodations in order to use Boardable most effectively, we provide those through the accessibility menu, everything from a screen reader to contrast enhancement. We can enlarge text size. We have a dyslexia-friendly font. Basically, if you need any kind of accommodation, you'll find it here and accessible via Boardable. In the Documents Center, you'll be able to view and comment on any documents that happen to be stored here in Boardable. When I go in and take a look at a document, I get a version of it that I can review. I can download it or print it from here. I can also add annotations. These are notes that you can put on a document that don't change its content. For example, I can add public annotations, I can mark up, I can add text, etc. If I want other people to be able to view what I've put on here, like say you're collaborating on a draft of something, you want to be able to mark it up, you can use public annotations. You can also take private annotations. If you just want to take your own notes on a document that will be accessible only to you, those can be taken via private annotations, and they'll pop up whenever you open this document again. In the case of any documents that might be out for my signature, we do offer a signatures feature, much like DocuSign or Adobe, and so you might periodically be requested to sign a document in Boardable. If that is the case, then you can find anything that's outstanding for my signature here. In this case, it looks like I have already signed. Yeah, there's two signatures requested on here. You see, I've already signed it. When I go in to sign something, very similar to Adobe or DocuSign, you can freehand or type in your signature if needed, and then you'll be able to have a separate copy of the document that is your record of a signed document. Meetings are probably going to be the core of your experience in Boardable. You can schedule meetings for any group, be it the whole board, subcommittees, and anything. In Boardable, it's very easy to create these. When I need to attend a meeting, I will find the information for that on my meeting page, and of course, if it's on the home page, I can access it from there as well. When I open up a meeting, I will find all the materials that have been prepared for that meeting. So you'll see when I open up my meeting page, I have the agenda for the meeting, as well as any documents that may be attached to that agenda. I can open them up where they live in the document center to review them as we go along in the meeting. When I'm finished with that, I can just pop right back, and it will take me back to my meeting page. If there are any tasks or polls associated with this meeting, for example, there's a task to review the materials before this meeting, I can go in and check those off here. I will go ahead and mark this complete, indicating that I have finished my materials. Hop back into the meeting here. You will also have noticed that there is a poll associated with this meeting. You can take polls on anything at any time, such as, hey, what kind of snacks are we going to bring to the next meeting? But you can also use it, if you like, as a way to take a live vote during a meeting. So for example, if you want to register your response to, do you approve the minutes from the last meeting, you can use a poll. And I'll go in and take a look at this. I'll submit my answer. Yes, I approve the minutes. I've set this to be an anonymous poll, so you can use it as a method of taking a secret ballot here. So I can see my own answer, but I won't be able to see anybody else's. Finally, when I go back into my my meeting page, I will. I see. I can do several other things from here. I can join the meeting if there is a remote component to it, be it on Boardable Video, our own built-in video platform, or an external platform like Zoom. You'll find the link here. I can RSVP from the meeting right here on this screen. And finally, if you're the kind of person who prefers all your materials to be in one big document, you can generate a board packet from this as well. So when you click View on the board packet, it will basically collate the agenda and any documents that are attached to the agenda, build them up into one single PDF document with numbered pages that you can use to review everything at once, if that's the way you prefer to engage with this. Anytime you click it, it will basically generate a version of that based on whatever's current. So if the agenda was just updated yesterday, you need to get a fresh copy. All you have to do is click View. It will give you a copy of the board packet that reflects exactly what's up to date. Also, when you're finished with a meeting, you can go back and view past meetings in Boardable as well. And this page will continue to be accessible. And once the minutes are published from this past meeting, this is where you will find those as well. So you can keep a permanent record of all your meetings as well as conduct and schedule new ones. The groups section in Boardable is where you can get things done in committees or other subgroups where you may have a business to attend to that doesn't pertain to the entire board. As I mentioned, I'm a member of both the Executive Committee and Finance Committee here in this instance of Boardable. So if I open up the Executive Committee, I've got my own meeting section here where I can find any meetings relative to the relevant to the Executive Committee. I've got my own documents section where I can see stuff within the group. Tasks and polls, can be assigned here and by default assigned to this very group. So if you want a task or a poll just for the Executive Committee, you can pop in here and do that. You can also participate in discussions, and this is a great place to introduce discussions. You'll notice that, just like tasks and polls, you can access discussions over here on the left side as well. But you can also do it through a group. Discussions, they work like a thread in Teams or Slack or whatever you're used to using, or even just a text thread. But it's right here in Boardable. If you have something important to discuss, you can have a discussion anywhere from a one-on-one to a group to the entire board. But you can discuss it here. You'll have a record of it. It will be private to whoever's participating in the discussion, and it'll all be in one place. So you don't have to chase each other around via email. Don't have to figure out who attached what to what email 6 weeks ago. It'll all be here. So, for example, I've got a discussion going with my colleague Lauren about, we're trying to figure out where to have the annual conference, and we can all chime in with our contributions, here, and then that'll be recorded here in the group for the executive committee once we make our decision. I want to point out the people section as well. I mentioned that that this can serve pretty much as a directory for your members here in Boardable. If I don't happen to have Adriana's contact information but need to get in touch with her, I can click on her profile, and as long as she's got it updated with her information, I can find, okay, here's her email address and phone number. Some further information she may have entered about herself isn't necessarily shared publicly. We allow you to collect demographic information and things like that on the back end in case it's useful for like DEI compliance, etc. But you can find contact information for your fellow board members through the people section. And one last thing before I open it up for questions. If you need additional support in any way, I encourage you to use the support link that is in the lower left corner of your Boardable screen. This will allow you to access the Boardable Help Center. In the Help Center, you'll find documentation on everything in Boardable. There's lots of written content, lots of video content to get you up to speed, and you can also find troubleshooting guides there. The support section will also allow you to contact live support chat. We do have chat staffed by live human beings between the hours of 9 a.m. and 10 p.m. Eastern, and on the off hours, we also have a friendly AI bot who can answer lots of questions too. But I do encourage you to reach out to the support team if you need immediate technical assistance. Nobody knows Boardable better than they do, and they usually respond very quickly as well. So this is just, your high level view to get you acquainted with Boardable, understand what it can do for you. But it'll now be up to you to get in there and play with it yourself. I encourage you to reach out with your feedback or questions. You can either, contact me on the customer success team. You can reach out to our support team. But very happy to help answer any questions you may have. Starting now. Where is the snacks vote? I want to vote on snacks. I think the vote for snacks is always yes, so I appreciate that, Jesse. Any other questions I can answer?
Don't hear any, but thank you so much, Brian, for your presentation.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Again, if you need anything in the near future, you know where to find me. And I hope this is the beginning of a great relationship. I'm looking forward to working together. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you so much.
Thanks, Brian.
Have
Appreciate
a good
it.
evening.
All right, we're going to move into our public comment section of the agenda. I was sent a copy of the public comment policy, which I normally have on a laminated card. So if we have any speakers, I'll go ahead and read it. And since I know we didn't have anyone pre-register, but I'll ask if there's anybody in attendance who would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature, and I'll read the kind of ground rules before we recognize you. So we'll pause for a moment.
Mr. Chair, I do not see hands up from any of the attendees to the meeting.
Okay, thanks. We'll go ahead and close public comment then and move on to the chair's report. I apologize. Actually, as it turned out, us doing this meeting virtually was not a bad thing because I ended up having a bit of a cold. You might be able to hear that in my voice. I'm just a little congested. So, and Brian, Turner, I'm so sorry that you have a COVID diagnosis. I hope you and your family are feeling better. And
thank you for that.
I wanted also to just give a kudos to the Dash team. Josh sent us an email on Sunday sort of explaining what snow operations at Dash would look like and how the decision is made, and a lot of what goes on through the night, frankly, in order to prepare for the service that's offered during and immediately following a snow event. Josh very proudly pointed out to me Monday afternoon when he canceled the call that we normally have before the meeting that he was out there helping to shovel out buses and ensure that service was there, and pointed out that really us and WMATA were really the only two service providers in the region who were out there on Monday. And those who follow our former mayor's socials may have noticed that he captured a picture of a bus on Mount Vernon Avenue and basically dared the post office to do as well as we did. And I know a lot of folks who are on this call and many who are not in the Dash organization worked really hard and are still out operating buses, or out repairing buses, or out supervising conditions. And of course, on the city side too, as I look at Hillary and all the resources within TNES and other city departments in order to ensure that roadways were clear, we were able to provide lifeline service to people who are essential workers, who needed to get to work, people who need to check in on family members, people who needed to do things that were critical that they needed to travel on Monday and Tuesday. And I will be interested to hear as we look at what ridership looked like during those days in future months. But it's we put out there that Dash runs 365 days a year and is there to meet your needs. And certainly during these events, we're really tested, and I think the Dash team did incredibly well. And so, Josh, certainly during your general manager's report, we'd love to hear more about that. And if there's anyone on the call you want to recognize for their efforts, we as a board look forward to hearing about all that went on behind this. Thank you so much for that. I will go ahead and yield to Hillary for the TNES report.
Great, thank you, David. I only had two things on my report tonight, so happy to answer any questions about them. The WMATA budget, I just did a really quick update. I think there was a request at the last meeting to provide an update on the WMATA budget and what the city needs to do with that. Right now we have a $2.6 billion operating budget and a $2.4 billion budget for capital projects. So there's a number of things that this is going to cover WMATA. I didn't get into a lot of detail, but just wanted to make sure I provided kind of those high level numbers for you all. And the second update that I had was the award of a US DOT SMART grant. So the city was awarded a stage 1 SMART grant. I think this board might have done a letter of support for that application. It's very cool, very exciting. I think only 21 other cities got the stage 1 grant, if I remember correctly. And this is a grant where we are going to be testing technology to scan our roadways for things like potholes or pavement markings being faded or traffic signs being faded. And we're going to look at this technology on different fleet vehicles. So we could use police vehicles, we could use trash trucks, we might use city buses. So the part of this is kind of evaluating different technology, and we work with the Virginia Tech Transportation Institute to then ground truth that technology and see which of the companies are actually doing a good job. And then we'll look across the different fleet vehicles as well to see, was there something about buses that made the data more accurate? Was there something about trash trucks? And it's all real-time information. So it'll help us make better decisions about our operations and maintenance. And I actually was thinking about this during the snowstorm as we're working with operators from our department operations center. We have staff there that's, using walkie-talkies and radios with the guys out there clearing the streets to kind of get real-time updates on which street they've cleared, how passable is it? And it's really kind of subjective, right? So this is a technology that could even help with something like that. So we're really excited about it, and we are working very quickly to get a project agreement signed and in place, hopefully this month, so that we can kick off this project in the spring with the Virginia Tech Transportation Institute. Yep, Praveen?
Yeah, just a quick question, Hillary. Does the technology index humans, or does it just index like physical assets, city assets?
Yeah, just city assets, right? Like our streets and signs and pavement condition.
Okay, so if it sees a human and a human's face, it's not like identifying the person or the activity that they're doing, right?
Nope. And there's a number of different technologies. So part of this project is actually we have a company that we are working with that we named in the grant they will go out and look at all the different technologies that are already doing this type of work and kind of categorize all the different things that the technology says it can do so that we can select. I mean, we'll probably only select 4 or 5 different types of technology to test, but they will help us kind of go through and look at the criteria to understand which technologies and which companies we want to evaluate. And so privacy matters are things that we can certainly include in that, but the ones that I have seen now are not collecting any information on humans.
Do you know if it can be used to measure tree canopy?
I don't know. That's something I can look at. I think it can certainly. It would be complicated and thinking about like the time of day that it's passing and where the sun is and understanding like the level of shade. I'm sure that some of these can do that, but it might add a level of complexity that we aren't able to ground truth with Virginia Tech as they're out there. It might be a little more complicated than that because they don't think they're more, the cameras are more focused scanning down, but it's something we can it's a question we can ask because a lot of these companies are saying that while they're out there capturing information, there's a lot of information on our assets that it can get.
Got it.
Hillary, I had a question on the WMATA budget. So appreciate the detail and the kind of plan WMATA has for the hearings. So I saw that their first year of the Better Bus Network redesign is funded. And I also understand that there were resolutions to the concern that Alexandria had about the commuter route on the West End that were resolved in the first iteration of that. But is WMATA proposing service reductions as part of that budget? Has that been finalized yet?
I think Jordan is on if he wants to chime in. What I have seen, and Jordan and Silas have been much more involved with this than I have, is the Better Bus Network redesign that was presented to you all is the network that is moving forward. And so there were changes to different routes with that, but I don't know, net gain or loss if that is actual service reduction or just changes to those specific routes.
Well, let me just before they chime, let me also ask just more broadly. I understand WMATA is sort of is requiring more money. So are they basically getting subsidy that they need from jurisdictions to plug hole, or are there like rail service reductions or things that we have to be aware of or potentially advocating against when the budget goes, not just within the redesign of the bus network?
I do not think that there are reductions. Jordan, I think if you're online and if you want to chime in, you've been much more involved with the WMATA discussions than I have. I mean, I know in the past we've had kind of a number of different budgets, right, that we've looked at from them and a number of different cuts. And but they did, they are working to increase operational efficiencies with this budget, with the goal, I think, of maintaining service levels. But I'm gonna let Jordan chime in if he is online.
I'm here. And I think you've essentially captured the crux of it. There were certain areas where concessions were made, but the overarching goal of that project was to improve service levels and capture new ridership while maintaining a neutral cost. And so there were some trade-offs made, but generally speaking, anywhere where service was deemed as a priority, it was prioritized that service was kept. And I think the only places where we saw reductions were places where there really wasn't the ridership that was supported that route being as frequent or running along a certain alignment. But ultimately, the project is seen to have improved service coverage, and then also to in conjunction with the subsidy allocation formula restructuring, if there are additional bus or things that are needed by jurisdictions, we now have the flexibility to kind of work with Ramada to make these things happen on a kind of a la carte basis. So, from what I've seen, really the goal of all these processes is to make things more clear and transparent and help people, get the service they need. And if there are additional things that municipalities want, then they're able to figure out how much it costs, and we can pay for that service directly. So I think overall we're in really good shape with what we got through these processes.
Okay, so this isn't a budget that chops. This is not a budget that's going to give riders a lot. We've had years where riders have had a lot of heartburn leading up to how they resolve. Sounds like this is largely a status quo budget with the understanding that there are the bus service changes that WMATA's already advertised.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge we're going to have is the change management, right? How do people adapt to new route names and new systems and new ways of using, the service? But, the rollout will be gradual, it'll be phased. And, my understanding is that there'll be significant engagement in the early stages of this rollout. It's to be seen how extensive that engagement is, but I have no reason to believe that they're not going to do their due diligence and making it as clear as possible. And from our side, we're really pushing that to say, hey, we need to see stuff as soon as possible so we can get it out to folks so they can understand what's coming. So yeah, that work is ongoing.
Okay, thanks, Drew.
Mm-hmm.
And
And I would say to Jordan's point, I think the subsidy allocation formula, the work that has been done on that is going to be incredibly beneficial for us, because that has always been a real challenge, trying to understand what's going into that. And if we want to make changes, what does that mean for us? So the transparency and the updated kind of process for that is a real big win, and something that the jurisdictions have all been advocating for quite some time.
And I can also wait until bus stop program update. I just had some questions also about in winter weather, specifically addressing access to bus stops in terms of clearing as we dig out of snow. So I can just ask now. I mean, I know there have been discussions in the past about kind of dealing with that and where that falls. Some of it probably is that it gets addressed, but then plows come through and shove snow back on the curbs, and get caked in as people are traipsing over them to get on buses. But I just wanted to ask kind of is how the city is kind of looking at that in this storm in terms of clearing those stops, or if those are priorities that if it's sort of things that then need to be addressed on a one-on-one kind of a 311 on a kind of as needed basis, or if there's a systematic plan for attacking some of those, especially higher use stops.
And I feel like I knew had a better answer to that last year. And Josh and his team might want to chime in too. I mean, obviously the city is trying to, when we're out there, our first priority is clearing our primary routes, where there's a lot of different players involved. And I think we do our best to clear bus stops, but Josh or his team might have better information actually on kind of how that works. Because from our side, we're really focused, on making sure the roadways are clear, and obviously we don't want to push a bunch of snow and make a bus stop not accessible, but we also want to make sure that the buses can get through on the street first, and we don't really have staff to be out there just kind of shoveling all the bus stops. But Josh, do you have thoughts on that or want to chime in?
I think we've been fortunate the past couple of years to not have to deal with snow, and so it has become one of those things that I think fell by the side. We actually did have a brief conversation at Dash about this the other day, and we struggle. I think the fundamental issue is that there is not personnel available to go and do the clearing of those shelters and those stops. The city does some of them, and we can revisit that as far as longer term, sort of how that all plays out. There's certainly a cost associated with it to some degree, though. Also, the clearing of those areas when they're in front of a business or a residence is oftentimes handled by that whoever's there. but I don't know that there's a great answer. Bus stop accessibility regionally, not just in Alexandria, post-storm is bad. There's no other way of putting it. It's just very, very difficult. And so I think there's opportunity for us to look at what ways we can potentially manage that going forward.
Yeah, again, conversation about, I mean, especially in an event like this where we're just not getting melting. So, and we may get more snow on top of it. And then once it does start to melt, it's just ice over. I think that is when you get more hazardous conditions out there. I haven't been out a lot, but certainly the stops, the WMATA stops on Washington Street that are closest to me, the southbound North Washington Queen. I mean, I don't think it's been used very much. So there's basically just a huge pile of snow from everything that was pushed from the roadway. There's really no place to let the person off unless the bus basically pulls into the next intersection and basically discharges the person in the roadway there. I don't think a person could get off without stepping into knee deep snow. And so, and that's really odd. I'm sure stops like along King Street are probably in the shape. I haven't been out there, which are very heavily used stops, just because the city I know does prioritize clearing those in Mount Vernon Avenue as well. But yeah, no, I'd like to it's maybe a conversation we can have in the coming months and see if there's a way to kind of address some of those, because certainly you're right, it's so important to get the buses running because you've got to be able to provide the service. We've got to make the roads safe for everyone. But as we're going to have more talk about accessibility, that's a really important element.
Any other questions before we move on? Thank you.
All right, Silas, I'm going to try to give you remote control of this. I believe you'll get a prompt that will allow you to click through your slides. So give me just a moment here. I see you moving. There you go.
I can click forward. I can't click backward.
Okay, I'll take you back. There you go.
Okay, now I can click forward.
There'll be a little bit of delay when you click. Just realize that. It'll take 2 seconds. Okay,
good to know. All right, thanks, Josh. Everybody, I'm Silas Sullivan. I'm an urban planner with the Department of Transportation and Environmental Services, and tonight I'll be giving you an update on the bus stop program. So first off, to start with some goals and objectives of the bus stop program. So our goals and objectives derive from the Alexandria Mobility Plan, specifically the transit chapter, strategy 4, which essentially lays out that we are to ensure ADA accessibility at our bus stops, find ways to improve the rider experience through things like trip planning and such, and also expand amenities at the bus stops, bus shelters, benches, real-time signage, trash cans. So different ways that we try and do this, just for example, to ensure ADA accessibility, making sure that there are level and clear boarding areas at bus stops, improving the rider experience through trip planning, accessing the bus stop, and then also expanding amenities that make it safer and more comfortable for our riders, to board dash services as well as WMATA services. So just touching on some of the responsibilities of bus stops, I know people are just speaking about, snow clearing. I will say that, generally, while Dash and WMATA operate the transit service at our bus stops, the city usually is responsible for the bus stop maintenance up to around 6 feet outside of the bus shelter, if there is a shelter, or just around the stop. I will say that, the city and WMATA both maintain bus stops at metro stations, though this differs based on the station. The city has King Street and Potomac Yard, whereas WMATA is responsible for the bus stops at Braddock Road, Eisenhower, and Van Dorn Street. And I also just want to touch on that, usually to help speed maintenance up at different bus stops, Alex 31 is a good tool. Usually we'll use that for reporting of maintenance issues from concerned residents. I want to touch on some of the statistics at bus stops. First off, comparing where we were the last fiscal year with where we are as we are midway through this fiscal year. In fiscal 24, there were just over 700 bus stops in the city. Of these, I pulled just some key percentages from our inventory. I don't have them on hand today, but if anybody requested after the meeting, I'm happy to go into our inventory and pull percentages for any number of our amenities we have. But last summer we had just under 60% ADA compliance. About 54% had benches, and then 22% had shelters. As we go midway through FY25, I did want to note that as we go from midway through FY25 to the end of the fiscal year, the number of bus stops will decrease. This is due to the Better Bus coming online from WMATA. So net will lose about 7 bus stops from WMATA service in the city. The number of ADA compliant bus stops has increased by around 5%. The number of benches has increased as well, though the number of shelters at the current time has not grown over the last fiscal year, though it will in the next fiscal year. Want to touch on some recent accomplishments, between the bus stop program and also in working collaboratively with the folks at Dash. We recently launched an improved program website. This is a good tool for any stakeholder, be it a developer who needs access to shelter drawings, be it to residents who want to know how to better learn about the amenities we have, amenities that we plan to provide in the near future, projects we have planned as well. We recently launched an interactive GIS map on the city website. There's a public-facing tool that allows residents to look at all the amenities that their local bus stop has, any bus stop in the city. They can play around with the map and see planned project mapped out. They can see where existing services lie, transit providers, where the transit ways are, things like that. Just one way that we're trying to get our inventory out into the public hands. And we also are currently working on another tool, a Tableau tool, to display this in a dashboard on our website as well. We worked with Alex 311 staff to not only record, maintenance issues or maintenance requests at bus stops, but also now we allow them to submit amenity improvement requests. That gives us a good way to track it and take that into consideration as we prioritize improvements at bus stops. I will touch on a few other things as well from the past few months. We installed 5 benches in the fall, strategized on locations there as well with Dash staff. We removed parking at 8 bus stops in December that allowed those bus stops to easily gain ADA compliance standards. And then also did want to note Dash's success in installing 10 new real-time signage at different bus stops. That was funded by Commuter Choice, and they did that in December. Finally, just some of our active projects we're working on now. We do have a grant project. It's going through the design phase currently. This will bring 20 bus shelters to bus stops around the city in 2027. We're looking at, we should have a firm selected this year to construct those bus shelters as well. We did get a grant from DRPT this past summer to improve amenities at bus stops. That work will begin in the spring, and it will consist of things such as low-hanging fruit, like improved benches, real-time signage, ADA compliance, as well as a little more, I'll say, innovative amenities as well, lighting and things like that. We are working through phased ADA upgrades. We have different matrix of, based on difficulty at bus stops. I'll say some of our easier ones we'll be upgrading over the next few months. We have 15 bus stops selected for concrete pad improvements, and it's just kind of right now it's in the vendor's hand, just waiting for better weather. As you can see, probably can't go out right now and do it, but hopefully as it melts a little bit, they can get out there and get those bus stops up to par. We are working with WMATA for their new bus stops as part of Better Bus. We need to make sure that those improvements are done by June. So we're looking at spring for those. And that consists of things like reestablishing some bus stops on Route 1 or in the Potomac Yard area, establishing a new bus stop at the Potomac Yard Metro Station, and then also bringing some bus stops up to ADA compliance standards in the Park Fairfax neighborhood. And then finally, we do have some, studies on the neighborhood and corridor level. Those are collaborative. We work with Dash staff on that as well, just get their firsthand knowledge and experience there. And we are working on some of those, and we'll bring some of those to you all in the next couple of months. That is the gist of my presentation, but I'm happy to take any questions or comments or provide, any more detail. Jesse?
So, Silas, that was awesome. Thank you for walking us through all that. I think my question is probably more for Dash marketing staff than you specifically, but it strikes me that it is great that we are doing this, and I doubt most city residents have no idea that we're doing it, right? They have no idea the fact that we are making some of these really necessary accessibility compliances, or candidly, even where some of these bus stops are. And I wonder if there would be merit in doing some sort of specific marketing push around our bus stops, right? Around the projects themselves, around the stops. Like we could do in March, we could do like a bus stop madness tournament and highlight like 32 bus stops, and people vote on, which one they like the most in the matchup. And it could be silly, but to me, I still am amazed at the number of people that don't have the kind of awareness of Dash and where it is and where the service goes that we would expect them to, because we are very close to it. And raising awareness of where the stops are and the types of stops we have feels like a way to raise the salience of the bus service itself. And kind of then we get like a 2-for-1 bump, because we're also then bragging about the money that we're putting into making these stops better. So just throwing that out there, the idea for the marketing team.
Camilla is on here and will be presenting later on in the meeting, so I'm sure she's taking lots of notes.
Yeah, I appreciate, Jesse, the reference to March Madness too. That's good. Any other questions?
Well, Silas, I did want to thank you for all the efforts that are being made, and we're getting a lot of results. And I know that this has been a long time effort with TNES, and so it's great to see those numbers continuing to improve, and also using different funding sources, and really being proactive on the parking as well. Which is such an obstacle for so many of our stops, and really is ensuring that this infrastructure can be well used. So thank you for all your efforts. And I also apologize earlier. Matt told me that my audio has been going in and out, so I'm trying to speak very close to my microphone, so hopefully you can hear me better. But I really did want to thank you for the great effort that the city is doing, and I appreciate all the attention to this.
Yeah, thank you, David. And just to let you know, your audio is crystal clear now. You're good to go.
Okay, thank you. And Praveen has a question too.
Praveen?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for this presentation. I just wanted to share with everyone that on New Year's Eve in the afternoon, I ran into a team that was in the act of improving a bus stop. And I texted Josh about this that day. But they were really friendly about sharing what they were doing. Like they were enthused about it being a digital sign upgrade. And the above and beyond was the blue dash sign had been taken off, but as the bus driver approached, just to make sure that the bus driver would see me and my kid, one of the guys picked up the sign and like waved it for the bus driver, the blue dash sign. And yeah, I was just on my way to drop one of my kids off at his friend's house. And it was a one of many great interactions with the teams to work on this.
Praveen, I will tell you that I did catch that individual and told him about that story, and he looked at me and said, "That was a board member?" I said, "Yes, he was," and he got in touch with me. So he was very appreciative and excited about the larger screens and the improved technology as well.
That's great. We'll be happy to have them.
Thank you so much, Silas.
Yeah, thank you all very much.
All right. Let me go to the next page of the agenda. We always have time in our agenda to allow others to talk about boards and commissions they serve on. Anything that you want to bring forward for the benefit of the group, now's the time. All right, not seeing any hands. We'll move on to consideration of the December meeting minutes, which were included in your board packet. Are there any revisions to the minutes as they were presented? If not, is there a motion to adopt the minutes?
So moved.
Is that was Matt? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Arish. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? It passes unanimously, and our financials were included in the board packet. Are there any questions on those?
I just had one. I know Josh mentioned that Dash was going to be involved in moving people around for the inauguration. And it looks like either a wildly optimistic revenue from charters or that is actually going to generate somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000. Josh, is that about right?
It's not going to generate that much. Edward is on, so he can speak to you about how that line item plays out for charters, and I'll let him do that. But I think that the charter revenue is set as a part of the budget process, but I know that he's been tracking that, so I'll let you weigh in, Edward, on the revenue side for charters.
Yeah, so the inauguration revenue is not going to be the 100,000, but the revenue for charters was put into this year's budget. It's the first year we put the charter revenue back into the budget. You remember it was taken out as a budget item, and it was just kind of extra revenue at that point. But we've anticipated, based on what we saw, the overall projected revenue for that line item is based on what we've seen in past fiscal years, our new rates, and it is a seasonal item as far as charters. So if you see it kind of slow year to date, we often see some of the larger charters, especially in the springtime. So to get us to the budget number is not like this inauguration isn't going to fill all of that. In fact, this is something that wasn't part of that charter budget. So this should help us get close to that number. I mean, this is just helping us fill that line item.
Thanks, Edward.
Yep.
And Jesse.
I know we have discussed revenue from advertising at past board meetings. It looks like it continues to plague us in terms of coming anywhere close to the projection that we set. Is sort of the narrative commentary that's offered at the top. My takeaway is that we are working with a new vendor now that we hope will be slightly more successful in making our placements.
That is correct. So our initial contract was a 3-year contract with 2 option years. We did not exercise those option years. We put it up for rebid, and the new contract will actually begin on the 13th of January. So we expect that to start to pick up. And then also noted in the board packet was that the prior incumbent that we did work with, there was a annual revenue guarantee that they've missed. So we're also going to try to go and collect that, essentially, which would then be revenue in whatever fiscal, hopefully this fiscal year, if they are able to make that up. But that would go towards that line item as well. It's not past revenue.
That's great, Edward. And in rebidding and selecting the new vendor, was their impression in terms of how they pitched their ability to do this for us, was their impression that we were like talking to the wrong prospects, offering the wrong products, some combination of both? Or I'm curious what angle they are going to take to sort of do better than the previous contractor.
So I think Camilla may be able to speak a little bit to some of, we had a selection advisory committee for the new vendor, but there were a number of reasons we went with the new vendor. The incumbent did bid as well on this. Some of the reasons that we had for the past contract that we were slow in revenue, some of it was just the market, things picking up slower based on COVID. The issue of wraps continuously came up with our prior vendor for a number of reasons. That the new vendor is pretty optimistic, and we felt like they were the right fit for the contract. So hopefully we'll see revenue start to pick up.
Yes, I can add a little bit more about that. So the new vendor is a smaller company that is definitely looking forward to getting to work here in Virginia. So this is going to be key for them to be able to start working here. So we're definitely looking forward and think that they're going to be doing a great job getting more business, more ads, as this is really going to help them grow even more.
Start with Praveen.
Yeah, just a couple questions on the summary income statement. One is that we've got a significant positive projected variance in fringe benefits. What's going on there?
So with fringe benefits, one of the things that often, and what comes into play is when we create the budget, it's often in the fall before we actually get our renewal rates. So a lot of the time for our insurance plans, we have to project based on prior renewals. And we tend to be pretty conservative, right? We want to make sure that we have enough projected for it. Ultimately, the rates came in much lower than what we had put into the budget. So that's one of the biggest things that's contributing to that positive variance.
That's great. And then the other one, I know this was in the notes about professional services, which is a big negative variance. But it mentioned that that includes both contracted temp staffing and external maintenance. And I think the maintenance part had been addressed with us before. I just want to understand, is it mainly on the maintenance side, or is there a big portion of that negative variance that's contracted temp staffing? And if so, what do they do?
So the biggest portion of that is the maintenance portion. Some of that is us projecting future months to be conservative based on what we had seen and expecting these maintenance services to continue. So that might, as we get as more months into the future, that might have a better projected variance just based on usage. Some of it is contracted temp employees, but most of that was in the early parts of this fiscal year. We had a number of positions that were temporary to fill vacancies, and also we had a number of people out on leave, and we were filling those vacancies. Most of that has concluded. So most of what you'll experience from essentially really November, December forward is anticipating the maintenance services. So the temp employees were more in the early months of this fiscal year, but that's more or less concluded.
Got it. And just the last thing is that I know the note said it's not an area of concern, but the city contribution not coming in, is that anomalous?
That is definitely anomalous. That is, we send the city each month during our monthly close process. We send them the city subsidy request. They post it to our books. It's not an issue. I noticed when we were reviewing the November financials that though we had sent that request, it never got posted. So we just sent them the request. We noticed they didn't send it. We sent them the request for the December, because we're in the December close right now. We doubled it up in December, and they've already posted that. So we're all clear. That's the first time in my 3 fiscal years that it was missed. But like I said, it's not really an area of concern.
Okay. Do we know what happened? It seems like a pretty odd anomaly.
We were working on another audit, a big audit, the big audit, and so there's only so many staff to go around, and I had them all focused on the audit.
Okay, got it.
Arish, and then Kendall.
Thanks. I just have 3 questions. So one, in terms of fuel costs, I'm just curious as to whether Dash does any fuel hedging or risk management.
So we have looked into fuel hedging in the past, a number of possibilities. One, there's the COG contract, Council of Government contract. We've looked at that as one of the possible options. That ended up actually, our current contract has historically been, we've had a better fuel price than that contract, but that's one possibility we can buy into. Our current vendor contract essentially allows us to tie into a 2-week opus, which isn't huge, but that's gives us a little bit of hedging, essentially, and that changes twice a month. We have talked to a firm that uses financial instruments and decided it probably wasn't the best option for us, more or less. Also, we weren't entirely sure whether Virginia procurement would even allow that fully. And then the last option, and one that I have wanted to talk to our vendors about a few times, and I've had conversations with the maintenance department. This has come up. One of the options that we've looked into, we're not tied into yet, but is something that we're kind of keeping in our back pocket, is looking at potentially buying future, committing us to, I'll just give an example, like buying, X number of gallons in March at this price and seeing, locking in that, and that would at least allow us to future-proof those or know what our future price is going to be. And that's something that we've looked at when there's some market volatility in the past. Like I said, we're not locked in at any purchase commitments at the moment, but it is something that we've looked at if we need to do that.
Just out of curiosity, I'm not familiar. You raised a really good point. Something I wasn't thinking of about the Virginia procurement rules. As far as you know, do the procurement rules allow the purchase of forward contracts far into the future? I know you're giving an example of like a couple months, but let's say that Dash decided, hey, we want to buy, contract for X amount of fuel a year from now or something. Are there limits that you guys happen to be aware of?
I don't know of any limits off the top of my head. Yeah.
Okay. No, thanks. That's helpful. And then just 2 questions about ad spend. Just when Jesse was asking questions about it, it got me thinking. I was just curious, what's the typical duration for an ad campaign that's run on a Dash bus?
That
Like
might be,
ballpark.
yeah. Camilla, are you familiar with what that would be? I'm not off the top of my head.
Not, I would have to maybe check some of the documents that we have.
Okay, thanks. And then just curious, are there any is there any ad inventory that's digital, like digital out of home billboards? Or
Yes.
Okay.
So we have the external ads. We also have bus posters inside, and then we have the infotainment as well, which would be the digital ads.
Okay, and those are all just kind of sold in advance, like you do an insertion order or something like that to say, okay, we're gonna buy that digital ad space, like an advertiser, at some point in the future. That's how you guys transact that?
Yes, exactly. The advertising vendor will manage different packages, and based on the needs and how long they are buying the ads for, they'll do different packages around them, around what we have available, and the budget as well.
Okay, cool. And then just last thing, can you just tell me the name of the vendor that you guys have contracted with?
Yes, the company is called Street Level Media. They're based in North Carolina, and they're recently moving, like I said, finding businesses and opportunities here in Virginia. They're looking to expand their outreach.
Okay, cool. Thanks a lot.
Yep, of course.
I think it's probably also worth mentioning, Camilla, like Street Level did some of our wraps that we've had recently too. So
yes, they did our Pride Bus. That's how we first met them.
Before we get off the subject of ads, I know there's been a lot of questions around those. 2 other things I would add related to this. One is that we are coming off of the first time Dash has ever done external bus advertising in the history of the system. And that all happened during COVID. So it was a mess. I mean, frankly, it didn't go well. It was a struggle. It was a struggle for us. It was a struggle for the vendor. So we are optimistic moving forward, but that's a lot of that history. The other thing is we have to also understand that our market is a small, insignificant market when compared to WMATA's. And so an advertiser, when considering this region and this market, is going to consider WMATA typically first. We are hopeful to go after more local advertisers. We have seen campaigns in the past that are multi-jurisdictional, whereby our buses are showing ads for the same ads that you see in Fairfax or you see in DC. But the fact of the matter is, one of the things we need to do is sort of temper our understanding and expectations around what we bring to the market. Mainly because our footprint only exists outside the city of Alexandria when we go to the Pentagon. So if you think about it as an advertiser and you say, well, if I buy with WMATA, I get Maryland, DC, and Virginia, and I'm going to hit all those jurisdictions and I'm not going to have any of those boundaries. That typically, I think, is going to be the challenge. I'm not saying that's insurmountable or something that the advertising program won't get past, but I just think we all need to make sure we kind of understand that that is going to be a factor that will always be the case for us. We also do not, because of the city ordinances, we do not have advertising at bus stops. That is a big revenue source, a big revenue opportunity. You see those signs in DC where there are illuminated signs at bus stops that display advertisements, and that is not done in the city of Alexandria. And is another component that is often being purchased with advertising space through someone like WMATA. So again, just some more contextual things, but we are confident moving forward that we've got a good vendor who's going to really put a lot of energy into this, and hopefully we'll see some returns.
You know, while we're on topic, and I'm sorry, I know Kendall and Matt have questions, but while we're talking about ads, it's just one other question came to mind, which is when we think about these digital billboards, are the ads that are shown on them static, or do they change, based on time of day or day of week or other factors?
Well, to be clear, we don't have digital billboards. We have on-bus infotainment, which is only visible to the passengers of the bus.
Yep, that's what I mean. Sorry. Yep.
Yeah, and I don't even know the extent of the fleet rollout of that. It's maybe just a handful of buses right now that have it. But it would be something, as I understand it, that cycles. But Camilla can tell me if I'm stating that wrong. But typically, that can be programmed to display ads based on geographic location or just in the cycle.
Yeah, that's right, Josh.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, go ahead, Kendall.
Josh, you were a great segue into what I wanted to say. I mean, forever, even back when I was in the budget office, Dash has struggled with the revenue for the advertising. And at some point, it's just not a realistic budget amount. It's not that you're not generating enough revenue. The budget amount is unrealistic and is actually what needs to change to be right sized to what is realistic for Dash, given the limitations that you have for generating revenue. And so I don't know, Edward, if that was part of your budget submission or proposal or part of the conversations you guys have with OMB, but it's essentially a built-in deficit for how we have to end the year when you have a revenue line that's never going to happen.
So to address that, we did take the revenue down in the last fiscal year, just because we weren't seeing that, the increases that we had previously seen or projected rather, and we weren't making. But with our the past contract that we bidded out, and then this contract, one of the items that is part of that was the guaranteed revenue minimum. And so we try to have that, if we project higher than that, we try not to project an unachievably higher amount. Now, I did mention that the previous vendor failed to meet those required minimums, and so contractually they do owe us those amounts, and that's something that we're working on. Part of the payments that we saw, you'll see some months in the forecasted statement, or if you look back in some of the stuff in FY24 as well, you'll see like 1 month, July for this year, for example, is $1,700. That is actually a catch-up payment from them missing the first year. They've also missed the second and the third year, and that's, they're not our vendor anymore. So we're trying to figure out how to, hold them to their contract and recoup that revenue. But like I said, we've changed our budget forecast so that if it is higher than what the guaranteed minimum, it's not something that's unachievably higher because of those past years where essentially, like you said, it was a built-in deficit.
Matt? So you're muted.
Sorry about
There you
that.
are.
Edward, just a couple of questions again on the expenditure, sort of in line with what Arish was asking. Is there a way to determine the utilities with respect to the electric costs for the buses, as opposed to the operation of the building and other electrical expenses?
So at present time, to split out the electric use for the buses and then the rest of the building isn't entirely possible because it's all metered the same. Now, one of the things that we do have, and we have a grant for, and I know that has finally started to kind of move forward. We do have an electric charge management grant that we've been using. That should give us some better information. The technical aspect of how that grant works, Raymond might be able to talk to a little bit better, but that I think should help at least us understand the usage, and from that we could extract the cost.
Yeah, and as each new electric bus comes online or diesel goes offline, if we could see the difference in the electric costs, I think that'd be beneficial so that we can sort of determine our return on investment long term, and also in terms of a carbon footprint, although I don't know how our electricity is generated. I think that'd be super beneficial, especially if fuel prices go up and electric stays stable. It'd be a great opportunity and very interesting, I think, to see what the numbers show. So thank you.
Absolutely.
And Edward, could I just ask one question following up on the kind of minimum guaranteed payment from the ad vendor? So it sounds like they've paid some of what they owe us for year one, but why when they missed it in the 2 prior years, why weren't we more aggressive about collecting that at the time, or were they only required to provide that when the contract term ended if they had a really good 3rd year?
So I think it was less about, I think, being aggressive with it and more just knowing their ability to pay. I mean, you could see them paying what they missed in the 1st year very slowly. And so I think there were a lot of promises of things are picking up. And so we kind of allowed, like, okay, let's see if they actually do pick up. Now that the contract's over, we are being much more aggressive to recoup that miss. But I think there was a feeling that things might be picking up, and maybe if they make more in more in the next year, they can help make up some of the miss in the prior years. But clearly, that did not happen.
Okay. Any other questions on financials? All right. Thank you, Edward.
Certainly.
Now we're going to move on. We have our 2 new attorneys who have been waiting very patiently. Mary Gail Holden and Brian Turner are joining us. Matt and Arish and I got to meet both of them and interview them. And I know we shared a little bit about their backgrounds with you when we reported out and made the recommendation that we engage with them. I'm going to invite Mary Gail and Brian if they want to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about especially their transit experience in Virginia to the group, and then I'll invite my colleagues who are on the committee to chime in about anything they want to highlight about this new relationship we're going to embark on.
How are you all? It's nice to meet you all, not in person, unfortunately, but on Zoom. And I actually appreciate not having to drive back on what could be snowy, icy roads tonight. So thank you for that consideration. I started work with Virginia Regional Transit back in the 90s, about 95. I've done work for them. I started as a board member and realized they really needed me as a general counsel rather than a board member. So I've been representing in that capacity since 96, 97. I've also done some work for the Community Transportation Association of Virginia when they had some issues and needed some structure, some help with their structure. And it's just, it really is a very giving position, because I know that by helping Virginia Regional Transit, I'm helping to provide transportation for people who really need it. They need to get to their jobs, they need to get to the doctor. And without you all and Virginia Regional Transit and other transportation entities like that, there would be some serious health and issues that we would have.
No, I'll just add on a little bit. Mary Gail and I have been partners for quite some time now, and I've been working with her directly on with Virginia Regional Transit, and we form what I think is a pretty good team, and we're looking forward to working with the board here. In addition to Virginia Regional Transit, I also myself serve on several boards and general counsel for other boards, and so it's a pleasure to meet with you all. I'm sorry we couldn't do this one in person, and in fact, I wouldn't have been able to come in person anyways because I do have that COVID diagnosis right now. But
Stay away, stay away.
right, so I'm sure I'm hopeful I'll be in good health and ready to come and meet with you all in person at the next board meeting.
Yeah, I have been chairman of the Dulles Regional Chamber, chairman of the Dulles Committee for Dulles, and chairman of a number of others that I won't bore you with them all. But it's interesting to be on that side. But my preference really is to be on the other side, advising boards and helping them move forward.
And we're happy to answer any questions anyone might have of us as well.
And I'll recognize my two colleagues if they want to chime in, because the three of us have reviewed the letter of engagement. In talking with Josh in terms of how we utilized Lonnie and both the board and staff needs, we had agreed that 60 hours in a year is probably reasonable, and so that's why you'll see 60 hours billed as such, which I believe matches the rate we were being charged by our current general counsel. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. And then that there's then a rate for any additional work beyond that to anticipate that we may have a year where we're going to need more legal services. And Mary Gail, you also had shared with us that it is your intention to begin within the next year or two. It sounds like a transition to retirement where Brian would become our primary general counsel, but with a lot of years of experience, you'll be able to help stand up the relationship and ensure that we're in good hands. And certainly Brian has a lot of great legal experience too.
He does, and I will be. I may step back a little bit, but I'm not disappearing.
Okay. Matt and Arish, do you anything you want to add about the process or how we got here?
Go ahead, Arish.
Yeah, not in particular, but I was just thinking, Brian and Mary, nice to see you guys. It might just help the group to get a little bit of an understanding, just high level of the substantive areas of practice that you have experience in, and then your strategy around engaging support, I think, with the law firm that you're affiliated with when you encounter areas that you don't have as much experience in. I think maybe the board may just appreciate hearing a little bit about that.
Sure. So just broadly speaking, my practice involves quite a bit of contract law, real estate and business law. And we work with a number of nonprofits and work on their 990s and accountings and things of that nature. Outside of that, we're partnered to what's called the Marquee Law Group, and that is a group of it's a partnership of professional corporations with other law firms. They have a lot of experience in family law, criminal law, personal injury law, which hopefully does not come into account or needed in the future. But we do have those amenities. One of my law partners is a state senator. She's currently in session right now, and she's always helpful in any type of legislation we need to put forward, if that ever is a case, or to talk with her about. Usually what we do is when a matter comes to us, we analyze the facts, we look to the law, we do our research, and we try and give the board an analysis of our conclusions, and then let the board make a decisions based off of our findings.
That's great, thanks. And I think just for the board's benefit, one of the things that was impressive, at least to me, was just having that flexibility and being able to say, okay, like we have an employment issue or a personal injury matter, or whatever it is, kind of all our needs could be serviced, if not through Brian and Mary, then and their colleagues through Marquee Law Group. So that was an important factor in my mind.
And
Yeah, and
by the way, I go by Mary Gale.
Okay.
If someone says, hi, Mary, I'm going to keep walking because I don't think they're talking to me.
I forgot about that. Thanks for the reminder.
Yeah, I think we're fortunate to have Mary Gale and Brian on board. You know, we looked at a few other entities, and I think by far and away they were superior to the rest of the group in terms of their substantive knowledge, knowledge on how transit in Northern Virginia works, and just their combined histories. So while we look forward to that, we also should let you know that Josh has a ton of experience in a lot of the legal issues he probably knows the answers to. And you know, the rest of us probably have a lot of extra knowledge as well. But you know, every once in a while we'll definitely look to you for sage advice on things that are just beyond our expertise. So thanks a lot. And you know, if you could get rid of the sovereign immunity exclusion for liability for transit companies in Alexandria, that would be a great boon for us, I think.
That sounds like a good legislative matter that we might
Yeah,
have to
we'll
take.
have to talk about that one.
Invite colleagues, if this is your opportunity to ask questions of our potential new law firm, understanding that at least from the board standpoint, they do a lot with Virginia Freedom Information Act, a lot with kind of corporate law, a lot of reviewing of contracts. Similarly, also on the staff side, things like settlement agreements and things like that, and a lot of also helping us through. I've noticed Lonnie's firm has also worked a lot with us on some of the ad issues that have advertising issues that have come up as well. And I think this law firm is well suited for the kind of work that we need and is very knowledgeable of state code as well. Any questions? Oh, hard to hear me again. So I was just saying, I think this law firm has a lot of the kind of knowledge and expertise that we need in terms of contracts and knowledge of state code in particular. As you recall, Lonnie, the last time he was with us, did his kind of annual or every other year training on kind of Freedom of Information Act and how we ensure as board members that we're following open meeting laws. And so I think this is a group that really understands the state code and will be able to ensure that we're meeting those requirements. And there's a lot of review of contracts as well. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you all.
Pradine.
Yeah, first of all, thanks. Thanks to both of you for joining us. But I had a question for our subcommittee before we move on to the approval vote, which is are there any sort of like quirks to this relative to any other engagement document that you've seen, or is this pretty standard?
The engagement document itself? No, it's standard. I think we made some revisions to their document, and they were addressed in the document. And I mean, I've reviewed client engagement letters for 25 years. There's nothing really out of the ordinary here. Nothing actually out of the ordinary.
Well, don't forget the part about that we get a yearly bonus to a place of our choice anywhere in the world.
Well, actually, anywhere Dash goes.
Oh.
Right, when you saw the provision that said it's governed by the laws of French
You get
Polynesia,
unlimited dash rides.
Yeah.
There should be a minimum number of dash rides in the contract. Thanks, guys.
Well, if there are no other questions, and Mary Gale and Brian, I know you're planning, weather permitting, to be able to join us in person in February, and we look forward to that. And I think you're getting a good idea tonight of kind of the structure of our board and kinds of things that we delve into. So hopefully this will be kind of good education for you. But our intention tonight is to vote on the letter of engagement so that we can retain them as our counsel and allow Lonnie Rich, who has served us very well for the last, I think, about 6 years, to head off into retirement. So
would you like for us to recuse ourselves? Okay.
I don't think that's necessary. Yeah. Is there a motion to adopt the letter of engagement?
So moved.
All right. Was that Matt?
Yeah.
That was
Oh,
Jesse.
that was Jesse. Okay. So moved by Jesse. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Steve. Is there further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Well, congratulations. We look forward to
Thank you.
working with you, and we'll be in
Thank you.
touch.
Look forward to it as well.
Us too.
We'll be in touch soon. I know Josh is working on figuring out some kind of opportunity. I know to have you up for the board meeting as well, but some other meetings to just get acquainted with the organization as well.
That would be great. Very,
Yes.
the more we know about you, the better we can serve.
Yes, and Mary Gail and Brian, I'll follow up with you following this meeting, and we'll get that connection with Lonnie. You're more than welcome to observe the rest of the meeting, but since we're not paying you yet, you can go anyway.
That's why we didn't put you first. We always put Lonnie first on the agenda because we knew he was billing us, so we didn't do that tonight for you. But
Well,
we will-
actually, this was good because it really did start giving us an idea of what you all talk about at your meetings. So this was good. I may beg off in a little bit, since I have the opportunity. I'm senior warden for my church, and we have a vestry meeting that starts at 7. I told him I was going to be a little late, so I may just kind of, I don't have the agenda, so I don't know what else is planned. But Brian, you might want to go because I know you're not feeling well, but I'd be more than glad to kind of hang around and see what some of the other topics are.
Yeah, I can certainly stick around too. Like Mary Gail said, it's good to hear the background that really gets at things, puts things into perspective and helps us with other matters. If you all would like us to stay.
I think that's your choice. We certainly can get you the PowerPoint presentation. We're going into a presentation on the operations department. We sort of do a deep dive every month into one aspect of the organization. And then as under our strategic, we're going to hear about our marketing and communications vision. So that's after our ridership reports. That's kind of how we're going to route the.
I may stay for those 2 items then.
Okay, so stay for as long as you want. We're going to try to finish a little after 7:30. We try to keep our meetings to 2 hours.
Okay.
All right, moving on to the staff reports.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I, as alluded to earlier, and thank you, David, for what you said about the operations earlier this week. I want to echo your comments and remark on the incredible performance of the Dash team throughout this storm. It is remarkable, the dedication that we have in our workforce. We operated a Sunday service schedule on Monday, which basically is sort of our least number of buses going out. And that was strategically around basically the issue of driver callouts and the likelihood of how many drivers would come in. Also just making service more manageable. We never stopped despite the ongoing weather conditions. Another piece of really important credit needs to go to the city, to the TNES team, to all the city staff that work with us. I intend to be sending out some notes of thanks for the support that we received. The coordination was really incredible, and considering that we haven't had a major snowstorm in many years, the fact that it went so well is really impressive. Certainly, we had a few challenges. None of them were major. A few buses got stuck, as David alluded to. Some of us got out there and got to help. But those were really, really minor sort of issues. And we made service adjustments as needed in areas where those challenges persisted. The other thing I would remark on is the fact that we were out there at 5 in the morning and there were passengers waiting. It's just a testament to the fact that there are really people who use transit and need it and are providing essential services in our community. And that is one of the reasons we pushed very hard to provide that service. Safety is always our top priority. And so we spent a lot of time, and I want to give a direct nod to both Stephanie and Ray and Ryan, who sort of tend to have a lot of the decision-making input expectations and have to get out very, very early to provide assessments. And I want to thank them personally for their efforts. I know that it is exhausting and it is a lot of work, but the decisions we made, I think, really worked out well. We did not have very many slips, trips, and falls. We spent a lot of time messaging to our workforce about that. The ones that we did have were typically passengers, and that is just an inevitability that exists when you have inclement weather. So anyway, all of that said, I'm really proud of the team and really thankful for everyone having committed their time and energy and for the work that they did with that. Yes, Jesse.
So I confess I was not paying as much attention as I would have wanted on Monday because I was running around with the kids home from school. But did we do a fair amount of social media coverage and promotion of the fact that we had service run in and our people were out there?
Yeah.
The anecdote I'll share is we were sledding over at the Masonic Temple. And as the Dash buses would go by on King Street, I would overhear like other parents sort of remarking like, "Oh my God, I can't believe the buses are running." So like people were definitely noticing that we were out there.
Yeah, for sure. And regionally, we were one of the only providers outside of WMATA that operated. We can't always do that. I mean, buses are pretty good at going in the snow because of their weight, but they're harder to control. And the biggest issue that we tend to run into is wet snow. And so I think the other thing that was in our favor was that this storm was very dry, powdery snow, and that made it impossible for us to run. Because a couple of years ago we had not as significant of a storm, but we definitely had to pull service in that situation. But yeah, thank you. A nod to the team and Camilla and her team. Thank you as well. They were also up in the middle of the night. We really spent a lot of time preparing for the storm and figuring out how we would communicate and learned a lot from it as well. So we'll be continuing to look forward to the next one. Of course, all the planning in the world will probably not have a storm for years, and then we'll be right back where we were. So we'll see. The other thing I want to highlight just here is on the screen, our ridership continues to exceed every prior month in the history of Dash. November was no exception, and you will see seasonal dips there. As you see in the chart, the trend is typically for December, January, February to be lower ridership months. So we are trending normally, but we are continuing to beat our previous records. So good news there. I'll pause if there are any questions specific for me, and then I'm going to hand it over to Ryan, who is our Director of Operations. He's got a nice presentation. Good timing to talk about what operations does, because Ryan and his team were out there all night and all day. So Ryan, give me just a moment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to give you control like I did to Silas, so that you can advance your slides.
Can everybody hear me?
Ryan, before he starts, how much sleep have you had this week?
I was debating whether I would open up by saying, please excuse any mistakes I make. It's been a long week. I think this is our third Wednesday, right?
Yes. Ryan, you should have a prompt asking you to take control from Zoom.
Let's see. I don't see anything.
All right, let me try sending it again. You're going to have to watch for it to pop up on your screen. There you go. Now just remember, when you click, it'll take a couple seconds.
Got it. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. As Josh mentioned, my name is Ryan Vishy. I'm the Director of Operations here at Dash. And my hope is that over the next 10, 15 minutes, I can give you a little bit more information about the operations department, how it's made up, and some of the things that we're working on. All right. So I first want to start off by talking about some of the trends and historical challenges we've been dealing with. Specific to transit, we have some national trends that have been impacting us and local trends specific to Dash as well. Across the country, we're seeing high turnover across all industries. Generally, workers are staying at jobs shorter than they used to. We're seeing low unemployment, which is leading to a competitive labor market and higher labor prices. And specific to transit, we're seeing a national operator and mechanic shortage. So this kind of compounds on top of everything to create generally
high overtime, lots of open positions, things like that. Locally, we're also seeing increasingly high pay from our neighboring agencies and high overtime costs due to that turnover I was talking about. And then in 2021, with the introduction of the new Dash network, we had to take on a lot of staff very quickly. So all these challenges have been kind of compounding to impact operations for a pretty long time. And I'm going to talk about these a little bit more throughout my slides. So I'm going to keep probably referencing back to these. So what does the operations department look like? At Dash, it's made up of about 240 people. That's 3/4 of the staff at Dash. That actually compares kind of favorably from an efficiency perspective to peers across the country. We have more staff that's dedicated to service on the road than you typically see. That's 219 operators, 19 supervisors that are covering both our control center and responding to incidents out in the field. And then we also have our leadership team made up of a director, an operations manager, and then, shoot, it didn't come up, but I was hoping to introduce our new deputy director of operations tonight had we been meeting in person, but instead I think you'll probably meet him at one of our meetings coming up. His name's Michael Randolph. He brings over 25 years of experience in transit to Dash, and we're excited to have him. So I mentioned 240 staff in the operations department. What do we all do, right? Over 160 of those staff report to Dash every day to keep service on the road. We are a 24/7 operation, so at all times we have some level of operational staff at the building or out in the field. 132 people that report every day are our scheduled operators. When we have additional operators to come in for standby and coverage duty to cover like time off and vacations or sick time. And then we also have those supervisors that I mentioned before. This is a little bit of information to talk about the tenure of employees at Dash, the benefits that gives us. So if you remember, I mentioned that low employee tenure was becoming increasingly an issue at other transit agencies and other industries across the country. So national average in the transportation industry for tenure is about 3.2 years, whereas at Dash, our operators are typically staying with us for over 8 years. So that's a really good, it compares really favorably to our peers. What does that get us? Well, one thing it does get us is slightly higher than average pay. So in transit, typically your operators are paid on a scale that increases with years of experience with the company. So here at Dash, our average operator pay is about $34 an hour compared to $29 an hour across the national average. Obviously, our location, high cost of living play into that as well. And what are the benefits of that tenure? We see reduced training costs. When an operator comes to us with no CDL, it takes them sometimes 9 full-time weeks to become a true Dash operator. And so anybody that we can keep from leaving Dash is 9 fewer weeks of training pay that we need to cover. It also means that our operators are generally more knowledgeable. They've been in the city for longer, they know the service better, and they can better help our customers. It means we have more consistent service because we have fewer accidents. Operators are also clearly invested in the Dash difference. When they come to Dash, they stay with us. And then lastly, it means we get to reduce our overtime because we're not having to replace people as frequently. We're not having to cover an open run because somebody decided to go work for a different agency.
Ryan, you got a question from Jesse.
Yeah, Jesse.
Ryan, real quick, I love that tenure staff. I think it's at that tenure stat. I think it says so much about the agency. I'm just really curious on the national average. Is that literally just a raw average of anyone working as a bus operator anywhere in America? Or is that normed against like system size and metro region size to some extent?
So that is purely a Bureau of Labor statistic number. So that is mean across the whole country. And actually what was interesting to me was when I looked into that data, Dash's 8.3 year number was actually higher than I think like any other segment in the country, whether you're looking at local government or other different industries even. So we do compare really favorably across the country. So I briefly mentioned overtime, and I've been talking about how these challenges have kind of compounded to lead to increased overtime over the years. So next, I want to dive into that a little bit. So I'm going to spend a minute on this graph because it's kind of hard to understand at first, but this is a graph of our operations overtime since roughly when the new Dash network started in fiscal year 22. So you can see that dark blue horizontal line is operations overtime in dollars during fiscal year 22, and it's broken out per month. And that vertical line in September is when the new Dash network started. So you can see everything is kind of, the years are kind of normalized. You have peaks around the same time. So the dark blue line is 2022. The orange line is 2023. You can see it started a little bit higher than the year before, but since then has been trending downward. 2024 is the green line, and that one trended even lower still. And I'm happy to say that 2025 is that light blue line that's down the lowest of all of them. So we're still continuing to attack overtime. The department is continuing to focus on efficiency, and we're working on a lot of different things to try and, one, increase employee tenure, increase employee engagement and communication, and also just generally focus on ways that we can improve efficiency in the operation. So we've made changes to the design of certain positions in the operations department to try and reduce that overtime. We've made changes to how we offer work and things like that. Right. So I just talked about some of the historical trends in overtime that we've seen. Now I want to talk a little bit about what we're working on in 2025, the new year. So one of my main focuses is going to be to, one of my main efforts is going to be to maintain a focus on that overtime and efficiency. We have a couple different projects we're working on to do that. One is a new software to help us manage our daily operation. We're also going to be, we already have started to improve our daily operations reporting so that we can report out on how service went and review it daily. We're continuing to maintain our strong attendance policy enforcement after we updated that policy in October of this past year. And then we're also going to be focusing on a different area, which is communication engagement with our staff. This is an area where we've heard from staff in most recent employee surveys that they want us to focus on. They want to hear from us more. They want to hear from leadership more. So we're dedicating ourselves to over communicate. We're going to be focusing on all the different avenues of communication that we have and making sure that all of them get the same message across all the different mediums so that nobody can ever say, I didn't know. We're expanding training and refreshers for all of our staff levels, and that's especially present at the supervisor level. So we're focusing on getting them opportunities to network and opportunities to visit neighboring agencies. And we're also focusing on leadership training and communications training for the supervisor staff level. And we're also going to continue to support new employee events and grow existing ones. And so now I want to take a second and highlight a few of these and give you a little bit more detail into each one. The first one I want to talk about is this OptiBus operations management module. This is an operations management software that is going to really not even, not blowing it out of proportion, but it is going to revolutionize how we do things at the dispatch desk. Currently, our staff are working in pen and paper to make sure that everything operationally is happening when it should, as it should, and we're paying people appropriately. This software is called OptiBus. It's currently already used in the planning department to help schedule our drivers. We're expanding its use into operations with a new module that they have called operations management. What this does is it helps us identify where we're missing an operator, where we need to assign a vehicle still, where an operator maybe is late or hasn't showed up yet. And it's also going to help us to analyze all the data that goes on behind the scenes. So currently when we're working with pen and paper, a lot of that stuff gets lost. We're working in real time to correct these issues. And this software now is going to help us spot those issues ahead of time and give us data behind how they happened, why they happened, and how we can improve them. So I'm excited to see how this is going to really improve the operations department's ability to maintain and reduce overtime, and generally just spend a lot of time focusing on the different operational KPIs that we can find from this software that we currently can't do with the pen and paper system. The next thing I want to highlight is the expanded trainings and refreshers that I mentioned. So in this past year, we have focused on improving our operator refresher training. This is an annual process that every operator goes through to basically make sure they're still following industry best standards, make sure they're still aware of our policies and procedures. We worked with the training department to maintain or to achieve 100% coverage rating of that training for the first time. And we're going to continue it this year with new trainings that I think Brent is probably going to talk. Brent, our training director, is going to talk with you about at a future meeting. And then on the right-hand side, this was a fun field trip that we went on to the Metro Integrated Command Center, which is a building very close by to Dash, where Metro actually manages communication for both the rail and bus side of their operation in one central location. We got to also go there a second time to see them enact it was like a live shooter training that they were trying to show us how a command center that's well staffed and well run, how that can really impact your response to an event like that. And so supervisors were thrilled and loved it, and we're talking about what we can do next when we visit them again. And then lastly, I just want to talk about the employee events that we've had going on and some of the ideas that we're working on in the coming year too. So this past year, we revamped our rodeo. I know a few of you were able to attend that. It's where the operators get to come in and kind of show off their skills with a bus. They go through an obstacle course. We have been trying to revitalize that to get more interest. And this year, I think we had more operators sign up. Well, we definitely had more operators sign up than last year by expanding prizes and making sure that it was really a fun day for them to come out with their families. And then we're also improving how we handle our trainee graduations. This photo in the bottom right is something that we've kind of revitalized again this past year, where once the trainee does make it through that 6 to 9 week process, this really is a day for them to come in and kind of celebrate becoming part of the Dash family. So we've been working with communications and training department to make that happen again. And I'm excited about continuing these events into the new year. We're looking at participation in a new national rodeo event next year that I'm hoping that we can take home a prize from. But that is it for my presentation. I'd like to take a pause here and see if there's any questions I can answer. And of course, I'll also be in person at the next meeting, and we can talk a little bit more then as well.
I had one question for you, Ryan. I know that Dash had, at least in the past, a regular quarterly all hands meeting, which a lot of effort must go into because you have to accommodate all the different shifts and
Yep.
days of the week that people work. Is that still held on a regular schedule, or is that kind of now as they're called as needed?
So I think we've kind of gotten into a rhythm of doing them as needed, but it's something that is being discussed at the senior management level about reintroducing those and reinvigorating them and what the right schedule is and making sure that the right content is covered. But yeah, we're definitely looking at expanding those in the coming year.
Do you think employees like those types of meetings, or do they want the information faster in some way you can? Because I guess you kind of can get information out to them faster, but it's not going to be as in-depth. You can't be interactive if you're not doing a meeting type format versus a memo or a text message.
Yeah, so that kind of is related to what I mentioned on one of my slides about over communicating. So something we heard from employees is that they want to hear from us through more mediums, not just all hands meetings, not just text messages and memos and things like that. So I think it's going to be part of just a broader push to get information out across multiple different avenues to make sure that if somebody does prefer the quick, hey, it's a memo, let me read it on my own and I got it. But if somebody else needs this kind of a more custom approach, a more kind of likes to talk it through with management and things like that, the all hands meeting is a good place for them as well. And it really just comes down to personal preference. When we're talking about 240 people, there's a wide range of how people like to take in information. So we get some people that like the all hands meeting, we get some people that like the memos. But what we're going to be trying to do in the future is just make sure that all the messaging across all of them is consistent. And we are getting to the point where they're saying, hey, I get it, you don't need to go through all that effort, but we're going to do it anyway.
Thank you. Praveen?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, and that retention stat was awesome. In these two main areas of improvement that you detailed for 2025, for each of them, what's the one metric that you're tracking, and how will you know if you're successful this year?
So when it comes to metrics, one of the hard parts about I mentioned a lot of the stuff we do in operations is still pen and paper, right? We don't have a lot of good metrics today that we can use to track these. We are working on with human resources to expand our employee engagement surveys to make sure that what we're doing is having an impact. And that'll be a trend that we can kind of notice over time when it comes to that category. With regards to operational efficiency, the big thing that I always focus on is every pay period for example, every pay period we get a report from the finance department about how much overtime we had that pay period. And it's tracked against what our target is and what our trend was from the last fiscal year as well. And so we're always kind of looking for constant improvement in that area. And specifically that would be like operations, overtime, hours, and dollars. So those are a couple key data points that we're looking at in the coming year. But I would hope that by the end of next year, I'd be able to report on a couple new ones that we've started to use as well.
Thanks. And what's I guess on the one that is specifically measurable, for the overtime hours and dollars, what's the biggest challenge to achieving your target metric?
So for that, I would say current. So I mentioned that we're on a kind of positive trend when it comes to overtime. We're hitting our target. I'd like to see us come in below the target. I think that the really big next step there is probably going to be in that operations management software that I mentioned, because that's going to give us a lot more insight, I think, into how what we do on a day-to-day basis is impacting those trends. Right now, we can kind of look at it as it goes, we can look at the last fiscal year, we can look at the last month, but being able to see really day-to-day, how much overtime did we have just yesterday, and having it right there at your fingertips and being able to make a decision on it is going to be so helpful.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering if you're hitting your target. I'm assuming that getting it to 0 isn't
right
the ultimate goal, but like if you're hitting your target, how do you know this is where leadership efforts should be directed? Like this is the number one thing that you as a department brought to the board, and you're hitting your targets. Like why should scarce management attention be spent on that?
That's a very good question. I think it's always a challenge that if you're not constantly focusing on it, you kind of lose it can run away from you, right? So like these are all these things that I was mentioning in the presentation are efforts that we're doing to improve employee retention, encourage employee engagement, in the hopes that maintaining those good relationships is what's going to keep overtime low and keep our labor force happy and allow us to hit those targets. So I guess the projects that I mentioned are kind of they're new for us, but they're new for us. I hope that they're going to maintain the trend that we're on. But at the end of the day, they are also sort of industry best practices that we're finally getting to implement, because I think we're putting more attention into these areas.
Got it. I guess maybe that's something I didn't understand. It sounds like financially 0 or very, very low overtime hours and dollars is good from the operator's perspective. Is that also the operator's ideal level of overtime, like close to 0?
It depends on the operator. Sometimes we have a lot of people who would take all the work that we would give them if we were legally allowed to do it. and some of those people, so sometimes you're at odds with what the employee wants. If the employee wants more overtime, by reducing overtime, we may be negatively impacting them. But generally across the board, it does allow us to do more things like employee lunches, things that are positive that we can use those funds towards to help the greater good. And then also, I think what's important to note too is that when it comes to what an employee specifically wants with regards to like their paycheck or their overtime, you're not forced into the overtime. Overtime generally at Dash is voluntary. You sign up to go onto the extra list, and then we offer you the hours, and you're still free to take an attendance hit and say, no, I can't do it that day. Does that answer your question?
It starts to, but I guess it's for me, it kind of comes back to a metric and why you would focus on this, because you said it was it seemed initially like there was a minimization focus, but that's not, and then you also talked about how that's like related to keeping employees happy, but minimizing it isn't actually what makes employees happy. So I'm just without like a presentation that says what the metrics are and how you're measuring them and how we're doing on them, it's kind of hard to know like what's what's the correct level you should be striving for, and is that what the team is doing?
Stephanie, looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, I want to maybe help supplement a little bit trying to answer your question here, Praveen. We have been focusing on overtime for a number of years, going back to, I want to say about 2021, 2022, when we did a presentation to the board where we were significantly over budget in operations for overtime. And a lot of that was attributed to a significant staffing shortage. I mean, I think we were like 40 operators down. And so I think the reason you're seeing it so much, and it's been a big focus for us right now, is because it's been a multi-year effort to try and get that number under control, if you will, through staffing and through other efficiencies. And so that's why we're so focused on it. Now, to answer your question as to when do we stop focusing so much, what kind of puts the nail in the coffin on this issue is this OptiBus module, where it really analyzes what we've been doing on paper and tells us like, yeah, you're doing it as efficient as possible. You've hit an appropriate overtime target. And so that's where I'm hoping, the next year when we do the departmental update, we can kind of bring this to a close, right? And you'll see 5 years in the making, we've reduced overtime and we're finally at the right level. And now we don't have to spend, every 2 weeks focusing on it. So I hope that helps a little bit more to provide some additional context as to why it's such a priority for us in operations to focus on overtime still.
Yeah, got it. That makes sense. And I would just advise that getting a really capable software tool is great, but but knowing what you're using it for is even better. So the again, I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but I would hope to see when a department leadership is focusing on something, that there are metrics that are guiding it, and so when you've hit good or good enough or great.
Got it.
Reese, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'll be really quick because I know we're starting to get a little late. Wanted to just ask about, and I'm sorry if I missed this, but going back to the chart that showed the overtime targets and the actual amounts from like 2020 on, I noticed like it's like a little bit of cyclicality where like, September, October, there were spikes. And again, sorry if I missed it, but what accounts for that? Is it just like shortages of employment in the context or staff in the context of school starting up again and higher demand, or what is that? Sorry.
Yeah, so I think a lot of it has to do with just common vacation season for people, or common schedule adjustment periods for people. I think typically when we think in transit, when we think of like return to like a normal seasonality, it kind of is that like September, October time when people are getting back into the rhythm of like, you know, kids are back in school, going back to work. We see a lot of operators that will, you know, maybe like take time off during that period. And it just means that we have to cover that missing person with overtime.
Okay, that makes sense. And then just one quick comment, and I realize there are probably different views on this. It's just my personal view. Going back to what David was talking about, all hands, I would just throw my vote in for continuing the practice of having an all hands and understanding that like there are night shifts. I've worked in environments where like there are people in Asia and Europe and you know they're watching it on recorded version, but there's always like a standing all hands kind of at a given time. And apart from the information dissemination piece that David's talking about, what I've experienced in multiple environments is just the kind of excitement in getting everybody rowing in the same direction in terms of understanding what overarching goals are. But, you know, a well-delivered kind of presentation by, you know, an executive or senior executives, the whole team, I think can really do a lot to motivate staff. So that's just my own personal vote of confidence, yeah, or vote of support for that.
Great, thanks.
All right, well, thank you so much, Ryan, for your presentation. It really covers a huge swath, as you said, of the workforce, so really important, and we're glad you were able to join us in this really, really tough week that y'all are going through. But
thank you for having me.
Josh said you're doing, your operations team is working hand in hand with the other aspects of Dash maintenance and administration and communications to ensure that the buses are running and that we have good service and we know what to expect. So thank you so much for all your effort this week.
Thank you.
So I do want to, I guess since we all don't have to commute, since we're in our homes, I do want to give Camilla time to provide her very important update on the communications and outreach strategy. What I think I'm going to ask is if there are lengthy questions and discussion that we could hold that for our next meeting, but I want to allow, because we've already pulled one presentation, the December meeting, just allow the presentation to go forward. Does that work for you, Josh and Camilla?
Yes.
Some thumbs up from the board.
Before we started, David and Josh, I was just hoping one or both of you could kind of remind everyone in the new agenda format, because we haven't gotten to many of these strategic updates. As board members, what's your expectation of like how we engage differently on the sort of when a topic is brought as like its departmental presentation versus as a strategic update? Because I know those are like different frames that we're in, but sometimes they can seem quite similar when they're back to back.
I agree with you. I think, you know, as Camilla's presentation has, you know, shows what two goals from the strategic plan that it's pulling from. But the departmental presentations were something that kind of we began just understanding we were getting a lot of the same types of questions, you know, especially as we went through the budget process. And so I think those presentations were so important that basically then to drill into a particular aspect of the organization. And while I think that this gets at a lot of what the marketing department is doing at Dash in terms of communication, really more about kind of strategy and how they reach customers. But you're right, it definitely has a lot of commonalities. I will also say that, you know, we started this format kind of in the fall, so we're still figuring this out. This is something that Josh invented that I think has really helped to kind of better organize our meetings, whereas we used to just kind of build an agenda around, you know, basically all the business items first and then basically get into some of those discussions, but to really kind of highlight that we would have different times for these different and very appropriate topics. We also were trying to build a timeline so that we could finish our meetings within 2 hours, which we haven't met today, but you know, we're kind of figuring out what we can cover in that time based upon kind of the needs and interests of board members as well. But we certainly can have a further discussion, perhaps offline, to kind of if we need to make refinements to the agenda or better clarify kind of what our intentions are with these presentations. But the feedback is important. Hopefully you were able to hear me through that. But let's allow Camilla to give her presentation. As I said, we can also put this back on the agenda in February if we want to have then kind of some board Q&A on it.
Josh, you already give me control of the
Yes, just
presentation.
remember when you click, it'll take a couple of seconds to advance the slide. You should be able to advance it at this point by clicking on it.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. My name is Camila Olivares, and I'm the Director of Marketing and Public Engagement. I've been with Dash for 10 months, and during this time, the department has undergone significant changes, including a whole restructuring process. So our communications outreach strategy is directly aligned with our overall strategic plan. Some of the goals that we have are system excellence and customer service experience. And this is to ensure that we are meeting our customers' needs and providing the necessary tools and information for an exceptional rider experience. Okay, so our primary communications goals are cohesive branding. This means that we work to establish a very strong and memorable brand for Dash with consistent messaging and also a strong visual identity across our different channels. Impactful storytelling. This means that Dash plays a vital role in Alexandria, and we have a very diverse workforce and so many impactful stories to be shared. And this is going to be told throughout our different communications channels as well. Engaging audiences. So through impactful communications and public initiatives, we are working to contribute to build a strong relationship with different stakeholders. And also through all this process, we are promoting ridership. This means that we want to raise awareness of Dash, of our service, of the service that we provide, and also encourage both existing and potential riders to always choose Dash when finding a transportation option in Alexandria. When we're developing our communications or any type of community outreach strategy, we carefully consider the different audiences that we have and their different needs that they have as well in the way that they receive communications. So kind of something that Ryan was mentioning is the way that staff receives information. Not everyone likes to have a memo or a text message. So we're really trying to find different ways to be able to communicate with our entire workforce. Some of our other target audiences are writers. So this also includes existing and new writers. And here I want to make sure that I highlight the Dash Advisory Committee. This is a group of engaged community members and Dash writers that provide a lot of information and valuable input to service-related matters. We meet 4 times a year, and we talk about different topics, projects about the city, service-related things that Dash is doing, pilots. They talk about different things that we want to communicate and making sure that we align their needs to however we're communicating. We also, one of our target audiences obviously would be the Alexandria community. So we work very closely with various community organizations such as Casa Chilagua, Alive, Senior Services of Alexandria, and various civic associations, as well as various commissions, such as the Commission on Persons with Disabilities, Commission on Aging, and the Commission for Women. Some of our target audiences also includes different partners that we have. This includes various city departments, such as TNES, Planning and Zoning, OCCE, DCHS, ACPS. We also work very closely with Liberty's Promise, and this is a group of young immigrants that actually last year one of their students did a summer internship here at Dash, and he worked very closely with the training department as well as the marketing department in various events. And also, as part of our partners, we're working with small and local businesses. So we want to make sure that now we're highlighting and doing a lot of cross promotion between those small businesses. And you may have seen some of those vendors and small businesses are some of the events that we had last year. So to effectively connect with our audiences, we have various communications channels. We have our social media. This includes Facebook, X, Instagram, Blue Sky. We have our Dash website. We have e-news and CMS system, which is primarily used for internal communications with our staff members. We have printed and marketing materials. This includes our ride guides, our flyers, the one pager that Josh presented at one of the board meetings. So different materials that we have to be able to give more information to people and show what Dash is all about. We have our customer service. So we have online and over the phone. The customer service line is open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. We also have various community meetings and events. And so last year we did a lot of different events and community meetings. We participate in a lot of events that are managed by the city, but we also organize our own events. And this includes our ridership celebration, the Dash Rodeo that Brian was mentioning, Earth Month events, Alexandria Pride, Winter Wonderland, and a lot of more events that that we organize and community meetings that we hold. So to have effective communications, this requires having impactful storytelling. We want to make sure that people are engaging with us, that we are providing a lot of information. And some of the storytelling strategies that you will see throughout our different communication channels are sharing stories that really tell, that center on someone. It could be an operator, a staff member, or a rider, or a community member. So showing how Dash changes their lives and really showing more of that human side. Also making sure that we utilize data to show the positive impact of Dash. I mentioned again, the one pager that we had, the infographic that really tells a story through numbers and in a very engaging way. We also are doing a lot of videos and images to making sure that we have the information in a more creative and engaging way, and sharing genuine and authentic stories that kind of show that emotional side, that human side of Dash. So we provide transportation services, but we're more than just that. We really have a big impact in Alexandria, and beyond the ride, we provide a lot of different opportunities to tell stories again, to be able to show our impact. So our impact extends beyond the transportation service that we provide. So through our free service and citywide network, we break down barriers and we connect people. We offer various tools to make sure that our riders are empowered and that we can provide accessible transportation for everyone. With our 100 zero emission buses, we contribute to helping and protecting the environment. And we also contribute to the overall development of the city. When the city is coming up with or suggesting development opportunities, it is always important to be able to have that opportunity, that there's a way to be able to ride Dash, to find opportunities for people to use public transportation. And I want to show some examples. So a way to really see how we're moving to have impactful storytelling, to show the impact of Dash. We have done a lot of social media last year, and like I said, a lot of events, different initiatives. And this is just some examples that I want to show everyone. And you can see as the video goes on, how some of the things that I've mentioned are highlighted throughout the video, like the storytelling, the impact of Dash's for the writers, for the community. So these are two examples. One of them was as part of an event that we participated with the city for the Alexandria 275 birthday. And then there's another video highlighting one of our operators.
Dash is great. I love the Dash. we love our Dash bus drivers. They are absolutely the best bus drivers all over Northern Virginia.
We really appreciate Dash service. Every time, I get on the bus, it's not only for the free, but all these, drivers, they are so kind and nice, and I really truly appreciate service. Thank you.
So this is just an example. It is so much more impactful when you hear that story from a rider than instead of us telling the impact of Dash. It gives that human aspect. It gives a brand identity. It really contributes to telling the story and the impact.
Dash is great. I love the Dash.
And then this is another social media post that we did of one of our operators.
My name is Diane Vernon, and I've been here since day one. I love to work with my co-worker, and I love to drive the bus. So I know I'm gonna miss it, but I hope y'all include me in y'all picnic and all the activities, because I know I'm gonna miss it, but I love y'all all. And I got another journey with my kids, grandkids, and great-grand. So y'all be safe and drive safe, and I love y'all all. Thank you. My name is Diane Vernon.
So like I said, in the last 10 months, my team has been working very hard to make sure that we expand our communications, that we have a strong brand, that we elevate Dash, and that we highlight the different things that we do beyond the ride, and that we're able to showcase and highlight some of the different audiences and our key stakeholders that we're working very closely with. So that's all I have. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Well, just very briefly, Camilla, how big is your team currently, and are you fully staffed?
Yes, as part of the restructuring process, we definitely changed the way the team was set up. We currently have 5 members. So we have a digital designer that manages most of our content and our digital platforms. And then we have a community engagement specialist that manages our different initiatives, public engagement, and we have 3 people in customer service and internal communications. And we're fully staffed. Sorry, I do want to say that it's a fairly new team. With the restructuring process, we were understaffed for a long time, but as of October, we're fully staffed.
That's great. And I think that's the largest the communications team's ever been. I remember, I think it was when it got to 3, I think that was a really big achievement a few years ago at Dash. So I'm glad, and you're doing great work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jaysha.
Thank you. Thanks, Camilla, for your presentation. It's great to see. I've definitely noticed on social media the more human aspect and storytelling that has gone in. I was curious as to the data that goes behind that. How has our followers grown? Whether it's subscribers to the e-news, whether it's followers on LinkedIn, social, Facebook, Twitter. Are you guys on Blue Sky? I'm not sure. I'm just curious about that data point.
Yes, we've definitely seen a lot of increase on our followers and our engagement on social media. Yes, I forgot to add to the presentation. We do have a Blue Sky account. We opened it, I would say like about a month ago. So we're now in Blue Sky. And we're also doing a lot of videos on YouTube. So we've seen a lot of interest from people. We did a series with Go Alex, a series of videos with Go Alex, and those were very popular. They did very good on social media.
Thank you.
And why don't we, if there are 2 more questions, so we can, if there are any others from the board, and then we can also have Camilla come back in February. Does anyone else have a question? Praveen.
Yeah, first a comment. Great presentation, and the some of the the branding, the community engagement part of it, I think is really has really been impactful since you joined, Camilla. And I thought, especially seeing all of the city and community partners who were there at the ridership celebration, it really came through that like Dash is, you know, enmeshed in the community and a partner with you know, the various city departments who are there too. I I I guess this is more of a question that doesn't need an answer, but I think one of the opportunities, I know ridership was like last in your goals. We're doing great on ridership, but one of the things that I feel like a lot of, you know, I think of as like convenience riders of Dash are less aware of is like, where does Dash go? Like I was kind of following that line of thinking, and so, you know, for sort of people who might not need to ride Dash but would, again, I think this is more about you know, making Dash, really elevating it as like a fixture in our community. Is, you know, if I think of like neighbors in Delray who regularly drive to Old Town, right? If people thought of Dash as like, hey, it's like it's a free shuttle to Old Town, instead of it's like the 34, right? There's sort of like a reframing that I think is a communications opportunity. If people think about Dash in terms of the destination, not just like the method of arriving there.
Yeah, as part of our social media strategy, we have a series of videos that we want to highlight saying Dash families, and we actually did those around the summer. So that's where we're going to partner a lot with local small businesses. So the idea was maybe highlight a small business and how to get to that place using Dash. So I know we did it for like Cinco de Mayo, we highlighted a Mexican restaurant and we show how to get to that restaurant using Dash. So this was an opportunity to do cross promotion, highlight a small business, and show how a regular person can use Dash throughout their day-to-day life.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. And we'll definitely do a lot more stuff like that. Like you said, kind of showing people the different places that they can get to using Dash, and maybe that will increase our ridership and being able to have even like more new riders.
All right. So Camilla, we do have, I know, a couple more questions. Jasha and Jesse both had things they're going to ask in February. It's not like maybe they're more in-depth topics. Is there any other final question that anyone wants to ask? We had said two more. We have one more if anyone wants to jump in the conversation. If not, and we look forward to having you back in February. I think you gave me the idea, though, that Camilla, you haven't been here for this. We do kind of an annual icebreaker after the board reorganizes. And I think our icebreaker for the board is going to be think of your favorite small business in Alexandria and how to get there on transit. So I think that's what we're going to do as our activity in the spring. So you can all start thinking about that now. But great presentation, and we'll have further engagement with you in February. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Right. Is there any further business to come before the board tonight? If not, our next meeting will be February 12th, 5:30 p.m. We're going to be at Dash headquarters for that meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Moved. Was that Steve? Oh, was that Steve, Matt? Who moved it?
Jesse.
Oh, Jesse. I'm sorry. That was moved by Jesse. Hillary's off. Are you seconding, Hillary?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you all. The meeting stands adjourned. Good night and stay safe.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
For letting us attend.
Right.